All right, welcome back, everyone. Gonna give it a few seconds and allow people to hop back in. All right. On my end, I see people are still coming in, but we're gonna go ahead and jump in so we can respect everyone's time. Welcome back. So good to see you all come back. I hope you enjoy your time in your concurrent sessions. It's time for our final conversation of the day. We're going to focus on change management and what it looks like to take some of the ideas that we've heard about today and actually put them into action. I know we all probably have a lot of takeaways from the really good sessions that we just left, but I had a chance to go to Dr. Hyman's How Managers Can Build a Culture of Inclusion. And I was able to talk to Morgan Smith in a breakout room. Morgan does amazing work at Horizons National. And Morgan reminded me to do something that I wanted to relay to you all. And that was to stay grounded and find your mantra as you do this work. Morgan told me that she was inspired by Maya Angelou and said the words of Maya Angelou have become her personal mantra. And that's what gets us through this work. So I just want to remind everyone as we do this work and as we hold difficult conversations in what may be uncomfortable spaces, it is so important to remember to have your own personal mantra, whether that's something or someone that just really grounds you and grounds us together. Please take care of yourself. And with that, I'll turn it over to our fearless moderator for this conversation, the amazing Corinne Whedon from America's Promise Alliance, to get us started with our closing plenary.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Raquel. And thanks for that note about the mantra. I think my mantra is listen. And that is good because my job right now is to facilitate this conversation and listen and have the joy and privilege of taking in all the insights from our great panel today. Before we dive in, I just want to give a huge thank you to our event MC, Raquel Crutcher, who's done an amazing job shepherding us through this half-day summit. And I want to thank each of you in the audience for giving your time and your brains and your energy today. We know that 3 hours is a lot virtually, but we appreciate you showing up here and in the chat all day for these important conversations. So my name is Corinne Whedon. I'm a senior director at America's Promise Alliance, overseeing our youth employment work. I am a white woman in my 30s with short brown hair, blonde if you ask my mom, but brown if you ask pretty much anyone else, sitting in my office in front of my bookshelf with some little plant friends hanging out behind me. I am so honored to be facilitating this conversation with these 5 passionate leaders who are working each in their own ways to build more inclusive, more accessible, more anti-racist, more human-centered workplace environments where meaningful, positive change is happening and is embraced. So in this session, we're going to talk about change management, or how employers can create the conditions for these big organizational shifts. So over the past couple of hours, we've heard about lots of different strategies to promote inclusion and belonging. Maybe it's new hiring and promotion practices. Maybe it's developing a more inclusive holiday calendar. And these types of organizational changes are important. And underlying them is ideally a bigger intentional approach to change management that requires more than a language change in an employee handbook. And more of a cultural shift. So that's what we'll be focusing on this afternoon. If you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to a couple of those at the end if time allows. So let's meet our panelists. To start us off, I'm going to ask each speaker if you can quickly introduce yourself and give a quick visual description of yourself for folks who might be attending who can't see the screen, and tell us briefly about your work and how your work connects to change management in this realm of belonging and inclusion. So I'm going to start first with you, Jahari.
Voy a comenzar con usted, Jahari.
Oh, I can hear a Spanish interpreter. I'm wondering if there's a way to turn that off. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jahari, and we'll see that's better.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jahari Shelton. I'm a board member at America's Promise Alliance, and I use it in words, right? I teach, I speak, and I write about culture, politics, and social justice with the focus on ecology and sustainable development as it relates to change management and belonging. I'm a Black man, 20 years old. I'm in an old boardroom with a whiteboard behind me. So I hope that that signals that I have something to say and quite a few ideas to let out to you. And I'm just excited to be here today.
All right. Thanks, Jahari. Let's go to Dr. Hyman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Marshawn Hyman. I currently serve as the Director of Learning and Advisory Services at Grads of Life. My work is to consult with companies and support leaders in implementing inclusive practices in their organization. So we help them change their practices and implement new ways to really create a culture of inclusion within organizations. I am a Black man. I am currently wearing brown glasses. I am bald with a beard and wearing a brown sweater today.
Thank you, Dr. Hyman. Let's go to Nadia.
Hey everyone, I hope you don't hear my dog, but he's barking a lot. So my name is Nadia and I'm currently working at Communities and Schools, CIS, and I'm the DEI coordinator. So what I do, I get to connect dots in my organization on how we can be more inclusive at the national office as well as the affiliates. I am an immigrant, I'm a
Soy
Mexican
inmigrante
immigrant,
um,
and I am 29 years
y
old,
tengo
sitting in my
29
apartment.
años. Estoy en mi
Chilly day in
apartamento
Texas, and I'm excited, nervous, and
y
grateful
estoy
to be
emocionada,
here.
nerviosa y estoy agradecida de estar aquí.
I'm wondering, so it's back to where we can all hear, or I can hear the Spanish at the same time as the English. I'm wondering if we can fix that on the back end, and sorry about that. All right, thanks so much, Nadia. And let's go to Suzanne.
Hi, everybody. My name is Suzanne Montgomery. I am a middle-aged white woman with long blonde hair, wearing glasses, and sitting in my office with I'm wearing a white blouse with a Black design on it. I serve as AT&T's Chief Accessibility Officer, and in that role, I'm responsible for providing tools and resources to our product design and customer communications and marketing teams to make sure that the products and communications we put out for our customers are accessible for customers with disabilities. And we expanded our scope of responsibility a few years ago to include tools and resources for our employees with disabilities to ensure that they have an inclusive work experience as well.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. And let's end with Shakima.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shakima Fulmore Townsend, and I'm the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Youth Network, where we help young people identify their career interests and enter and advance along a chosen career path. And we do that in a lot of ways, but some of our most notable efforts are to help young people attain a secondary credential. So either traditionally in what we all know as high schools of today or in alternative programs. And we also expose them to the real world of work through summer jobs, after school internships, and also jobs throughout the school year. I'm a Black woman with braids in my hair, twists with a pop of red. I'm a pop of red everywhere. I have a pop of red on my glasses, a pop of red in my jacket or a multicolored jacket on. And the reason why I have so much red around me is because I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And for those of you who know, you know that the red, the crimson, and the cream are our colors. And so I'm giving you a little bit of my personal flair. I'm in my office where I have a picture of a woman from Delta in the background, just to remind me of the greatness from which I come. I've come from a long line of great warriors and women who have been transformation agents from a long time ago, and I'm standing on their shoulders. And I do this work just to say thank you, because I've been given so many opportunities, and I want young people to know that their dreams are possible too.
Awesome. Thanks, Shakima. And I'm going to stick with you on the note of being a transformation agent. You, I would call a transformation agent in an early conversation about this event as one of our advisors, you were actually the person who said, we can't talk about inclusion or belonging or diversity without having a meaningful discussion of change management. So I'm wondering if, to start us off, you can share a little bit about why this conversation about change management is so important and how that's shown up for you as the leader of your own organization.
I appreciate this question. Definitely in the last let's say 2 years, right? Post-pandemic, through the pandemic, during the pandemic, and even as we embrace change and what it means both to work, right? The function of a workplace, right? And the expectations of workers and employers. There is no way that we can talk about the evolution of those three things and not think about how we have to change, how our traditional assumptions have to be questioned. And we can't assume that what people wanted before is what they want now. And I'm facing that every single day as a leader with 5 generations in the workplace, a very diverse workplace, and also recognizing that the priorities both of the work, the young people we serve, and the people I call colleagues have shifted dramatically. And that requires us to sort of revisit assumptions, think about what it means to challenge conventional norms, look at privilege and ask both where privilege is apparent and where is it hiding, and rethink the contract of employee and employer, but also rethink what it really means to bring your whole self to work and how you can maximize those assets towards common goals and how you can adjust in order to accept people for who they are, where they are, and how you can coexist. And I think that it's very important. It's not the work of old. The workforce of old is gone, and we all have to kind of establish new agreements amongst our peers and our colleagues. And that's why I think change management is really important in this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's spot on, Shakima. And you mentioned revisiting assumptions and challenging conventional norms. And we've been thinking a lot about that. And I know, Nadia, you have as well. You have spoken and written a lot about challenging norms, and specifically white dominant norms in the workplace, and how those norms can cause many people, particularly employees of color, to feel like they don't belong. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that's been like for you personally, and if you can share in your role some change management strategies or approaches that you have explored about unlearning and dismantling these sort of default white dominant norms and practices.
Yes, so I've been actually exploring this concept, not because I wanted to explore it, but because as an immigrant or as a first generation woman who went to college and graduated from college, and then not only did I graduate from college, but I also was a first generation a woman to ever attend school beyond middle school. So it was already a lot of change on change. Like I'm changing the trajectory of the future generations. And so I just saw like a need of, wait, like why are these opportunities not for everyone? And then whenever I was in organizations, I saw that I saw that we were coming with our own ideas on how we should do things instead of actually starting to listen to the people and why we were doing the things. We start like questioning. I started to question because I've always been a very curious person, but whenever I started to question things, people started to not like me as much. And I think that that's okay, because it has led me where I am today, which is DEI, which I never thought it would like bloom, or I didn't even know what diversity, equity, and inclusion was until a couple of years ago that the national office at Communities in Schools just asked affiliates to answer some questions on like what they were seeing at affiliates. And I was seeing a lot of needs, and I just was putting the honest answers for every single thing that they asked. And I was chosen to go to Montgomery. And after that, I started to volunteer with the national office. And then a year later, now I am at the national office working as a DEI coordinator. One of these strategies that I've personally, that I really have enjoyed doing is I started an affinity group for Spanish speaking colleagues. It's only 6 people in our organization that speak Spanish, but I honestly didn't ever spoke Spanish in high school or in college or in my workforce because I never felt safe. And so I thought, why not actually start something and not just leave that at home with my family, but actually start it with people here. And it actually has been really great because at the Hispanic Heritage Month, we all collaborated. The Spanish club plus the people from the engagement working group, which I also lead. I'm one of the co-leaders. Yeah, so yeah, just feeling more inclusive, even with your language, but I think you have to take responsibility for that, as I took responsibility because I wanted to bring my language so I could feel more like myself.
Thanks,
Hope
Nadia.
that answered the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it seems like your employer is taking what is a first or an early important step is to just start asking those questions and expecting and hoping for honest answers. And Jahari, I know you've been doing a lot of similar work as a consultant with lots of organizations to better understand sort of these norms that Nadia was talking about and how to dismantle those specifically around white supremacy culture and white dominant norms. And often when it comes to organizational changes in this regard, there's this tension between a desire to take a slower, more incremental approach to change management, while others are kind of opting to take what is seen as more of a radical or comprehensive approach. And I'm wondering if you can share some insight into how some organizations you've worked with have navigated that tension, and what does like when it comes to change management, what does a radical versus incremental approach look like, especially when it comes to something like dismantling white supremacy culture in the workplace?
Okay, loaded question, Corinne. I'm going to try to be succinct and concise with this, right? So after last summer of 2020, right, there was a lot of energy, new or reinvigorated, right, whatever stance or position that organization was in prior to that, right, that they took up anti-racism or diversity and inclusion as a new kind of workplace strategy in order for them to transform enough to affirm and kind of not be left behind, right? Not be on the wrong side of history, right? This is a mass movement, biggest movement we've seen, right? As far as I know in history, right, of this country. And so the hard part of it, right, is that people don't like change. We don't like change, right? We resist it in every facet of our life. We stick to what's familiar because that is what's comfortable. And, you know, in a world like this, right, everybody needs comfort somewhere, somehow, right? So I'm not faulting people for that. And I think that that is what one of the first strategies, right, to making change management work is building relational trust, right? Building a rapport with the people that you are in community with, whether that community organization, whether it be, you know, resource groups or alliances, kind of like what Nadia was talking about, right? To be able to understand where people are, meet them where they are, and then make the necessary changes to go forward, right? I can't come in with a one size fits all approach to, well, here's how you're going to comprehensively, right, do this kind of work. That's where we fall short. And so again, to my focus around ecologies, right, I focus on relationships, relational hierarchy, and power, right, which is basically the function of how we relate to each other, whether it's through position or whether it's through community building, right? And so going that route, I think there has been more openness to the conversation, right? But then there's also this thing about epistemology, right? And knowledge, right? That we all have to be working from the same place, right? Trying to play catch up with information that should be, right, rather standard, right? Having debates about things that should have been established 50 years ago, right, is not sustainable. And so those environments I usually do not work in, right? That's somebody else's work, it's not mine. But that is an important part too, right? Being able to gain enough knowledge of the people to bring them towards an epistemological standpoint or a knowledge production process, right? That helps them to see that this is their role in transforming their organization, transforming themselves, and then because they're mission driven, right, transforming the world.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you all couldn't hear me. I kept saying, uh-huh, and then I realized I'm not muted. So I'm probably just like nodding along verbally with you. But one thing you said really stood out is like building relational trust and how important that is. And even with that, oftentimes, change is hard. And I'm wondering if I'm hoping you can speak to that a little bit, Dr. Hyman, as someone who has done a lot of work on management and leadership. Something that commonly comes up in conversations about change management is pushback or resistance. And especially when we're talking about things like power and inclusion, there can be a lot of pushback, particularly when there are these like operational changes that are happening, some of which have been mentioned already. And then there's like these more personal or social or relational changes. So Dr. Hyman, I'm wondering if you can share some of the common obstacles that you've seen leaders and managers face when it comes to trying to make this type of change and this type of culture shift in their organizations, and how you've seen them manage them successfully.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I can give, I'll give 3 examples quickly, and I'll give an example from the employee lens, from the organizational lens, and then also from the leadership lens. So as an employee, you typically hear the statement, well, that's the way we've always done it, right? And this statement comes usually from the people that benefit from the current systems. So I would always recommend the leaders to think about helping people see the current challenge, right? So using data, whether it be numbers or stories, to help inform how these current systems impact some folks negatively, right? And then also help folks understand that this current system might require you to change, or excuse me, this new system might require you to change, but it won't negatively impact your work, right? So I think it's really important to show the challenge and then help people come along on the journey. From the organizational lens, resources is always a challenge. And what I mean by resources, like money, people, time, things like that. So before you decide to make any change, you need to determine how much money you're going to commit to this, or how much time you're going to commit to this. Are you going to hire people? Are you going to reallocate some time from current employees? But make those decisions first, and then you actually move forward with your plan. A lot of times people will make these large, big audacious statements, these commitments, and then realize they have no resources to actually get it done, right? So make those decisions first, and then you move forward. And I think third, as leaders, there's a mindset that we typically encounter, and I call it the all or nothing syndrome. It's I wrote about this in the Grads of Life blog a couple of weeks back, but it's typically a leader that they'll be doing all the work. They'll be at every meeting. They'll be wordsmithing every email, doing all the things, right? Disempowering the leaders in the organization, or they're immobilized, right? So like to either extreme. So it's really important that we position DEI as a crucial business unit. And once we do that, we recognize that diversity, equity, and inclusion will have challenges just like any other business unit. We need to re-strategize and create new goals and shift the way we're thinking, just like any other business unit, right? And then hire the folks that we are going to hire and trust to get the work done effectively. So I think those are 3 common challenges that I would offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that I liked your 3-part answer. There's like the data part, there's the money part, and then there's like the structural creating the environment and the structure for that, all of which are super easy and happen overnight, right? And Suzanne, I'm wondering if we can bring you into this a little bit about especially the data piece. So one thing that has come up for us a lot at America's Promise, and just always comes up in conversations about change management with diversity and inclusion, is measurement. Like, how can we measure something like belonging? How can we measure something like inclusion? And if we set these big, ambitious goals, how do we hold ourselves accountable to making progress towards those goals? So Suzanne, can you share any steps that AT&T is working on to measure its own progress on accessibility from your side, but also anything related to equity within your scope of work?
Sure. So Dr. Hyman's discussion was a great leader. I was nodding as he was going because he was basically describing my life. It is a challenge in a corporation because budgets are set. That's the reality. Is you have existing programs, you have existing business deliverables. At the core, company exists to provide products and services to your customers. But one thing that's been kind of a wake-up call for everybody over the last, I don't know, 18, 20 months that we've all lived through is that importance of the employee experience. So that in some way has made the budget ask a little bit easier as I hold my two fingers really close together. So, you know, fighting for those elusive budget dollars can be a challenge for all of us. So we go in with as much data as we can. So when we were getting started with our shift to thinking about accessibility as a business necessity for our employees beyond just our customers. And don't get me wrong, accessibility for our customers is so critical and that will not go away, but expanding that to our employees as well, we were asking for a change. So we started with data. We started with employee surveys. We talked to our employee resource group that is for employees with disabilities, allies, people with loved ones. Our employee resource groups are very open, but that's kind of their community that they're in. We have a group of accessibility champions that have kind of raised their hand and said, this is something that's important to me. So we sent our survey to them. We talked to supervisors of employees with disabilities. We talked to employees with disabilities, and we created our big, huge list and said, these are all the things we need to do to make AT&T better based on input from the employees. And so we had to take that data and we had to start prioritizing and thinking about what can we do in the short term, what's some quick wins. Getting quick wins, I think, is so critical because it shows that you can be successful. It shows other leaders in the business that this isn't just a dream. It's something that can be brought to reality. So finding a few quick wins, I think, is critical for getting buy-in with other leaders in the business and taking a prioritized approach. Wherever you are in your journey at your company for whatever area of diversity, you have a starting point. So improvement is improvement. So it's not going to happen overnight. So what's your 1-year plan? What's your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? And how do you reach there? What's it going to take? And being very deliberate and having that feedback loop is also very important. If you have executives that are supporting you in the plan, going back to them every few months and saying, this is where we stand now. This is where we've gotten. Here's where I need your support to take it to the next level. Here's my plan on how to get there. And here's what it's going to take. Here's how I've shifted based on reality. I think I heard when Shakima was talking, revisit assumptions, but when you're on this journey, you're going to have your own assumptions. You need to revisit those assumptions as well at each step along the journey. So none of this is magic. It's all being deliberate. It's all using data, using the experts available to you. Your employees are your best and most important expert base. Use them, get their information, share with them your plan, have them kick the tires, so to speak, and continue the feedback loop with everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought of, or it feels practical and doable, like with this concept of like, how do I measure something that's so big and kind of amorphous, like starting with your employee base and taking that information and having quick wins to kind of, I love that advice to kind of communicate that this, yes, it takes time and it can work and it can make a difference. You also mentioned something that makes me want to shift gears a little bit. Still on the theme of change management, but I want to talk about something that's been getting a lot of national attention, and that's that people are quitting their jobs. Lots of people are quitting their jobs. Some people are calling it the Great Resignation. And I want to share that a couple of little data points on that. So according to the Department of Labor, more than 11 million workers left their jobs between April and June of 2021. And a recent study by Adobe found that more than half of young people age 18 to 24, I'm going to say that again, more than half of young people 18 to 24 reported that they intend to leave their job within the next year. In terms of change management and culture shifts, like this is huge. And I want to be clear that there are many contributing factors to this, many of which are outside the scope of what we're talking about today. However, this is emblematic of a massive kind of cultural movement. And employers do have an important role to play in cultivating the type of environments that people want to be a part of. And so I want to turn back to you, Shakima, moving through this critical moment and this big cultural shift employers around the country are grappling with, like, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for the type of environment that I can cultivate? How can leaders, how can managers show up for their employees right now in this pivotal moment in the American workplace? And what's your advice for those who are trying to navigate this?
Wow. Talk about a loaded question. Advice. I'm experiencing some transitions right now in the organization. And I do think it's important to meet people where they are, in that some of the first responses is like, how does this change affect me? Do I now have more work because we have less people? And I think that it's important to acknowledge the me part of this. Sometimes it is, I'm going to miss this colleague. They were a part of what made work enjoyable. And now I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy it because they were a huge part of my life at work, right? And that is something to address. I've tried to just take each situation, one situation at a time, and try to create I wouldn't use the words relational trust, but just to be a person, a human in the space with someone. And I think that does build trust when you are able to be vulnerable, to be who you are, and to just support folks. I will say my HR person last week, she had a rough week. It was a rough week. And I just walked into her office and said, hey, let's go for a walk. And she's looked at me and I'm like, if now is a good time, great, let's do it now. If now is not a good time, come back to my office later. But whenever you're ready, we should just go for a walk. And we literally walked around the block, and she was able to be human about how she felt about all the transitions and what she had to do. And I think that it's okay to embrace the humanity of individuals at work. And I try to find as many places to show up 100% Shakima as a human first, and to connect with my colleagues as humans as well.
Yeah, that's seems to be one of the big themes of today. Suzanne, I'm wondering if you might be able to chime in on this a little bit from your perspective, like with everything that's going on right now in the kind of workplace trends, what can employers do right now to show up for their employees? And how is that part of this bigger mindful strategy employers can take to change around this?
So I think Shakima hit it dead on. I think you need to be there for your employees and show authenticity and show that you care. I think a lot of it starts with genuine conversations. I saw something somewhere, Wall Street Journal, LinkedIn, somewhere not too long ago, that people leave employers, supervisors, they don't leave companies. So much is tied to that direct supervisor. So if you're a leader who leads people leaders, or you're a direct people leader yourself, thinking about what is that employee experience, having true, authentic conversations. You hear something's happening in their lives. Are you talking to them about it? If it's a celebration, a new family member is welcome, even if it's a furry family member, are you celebrating with them? If it's, they lost something or they're going through something, are you checking in with them and just showing that you care? I think that goes so far miles. It's that human side. Sometimes as business leaders, we get so focused on those business deliverables. Did you reach your P&L for this month? Did you hit your project timeline and goals? And look, it's work for a reason, so you got to do that. But if you come with your heart first and that authenticity on the relationship side, I think it's going to go so far. And just creating that culture of openness and relationship that's going to help maintain and sustain your employee relations.
Yeah, I want to channel Jahari or turn to you, Jahari, and then maybe to Nadia too, about that human connection that you're talking about. And as Jahari said earlier, relational trust, like it seems like that's clearly very important. And a lot of employers are trying to figure out, like, what are the ways that I can do that? Like, especially if you're in a virtual environment, right? It's like, I'm not passing you in the hallway anymore. Like how can I create the types of structure, or create the type of culture where humanness is centered? And Jahari, I'm wondering if you can share any insight from the orgs you've worked with around that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to community, right? And the relational hierarchies, the relationships, and the relational power, right, that we have, right? A lot of managers don't know how to manage. I'm sure everyone on here can agree that they've had a bad boss, right? They've had someone that they were reporting to that was not the most supportive, they were not the most caring, they were not the most approachable, right? And so it really comes back to everyone's dealing with something, right? Everyone's dealing with traumas, everyone's dealing with devastation, loss, grief, right? It's hard to turn on the news, right, in the morning, not see the amount of people that are dying from ecological collapse, from disease, so on and so forth, all across the world, and not bring that into the workplace, right? So the suggestion, right, the advice, right, is about building community, right? You want to be in community with people to the point in which you're willing to be vulnerable with them, you're allowing them to be vulnerable with you, and you're also acknowledging what is actually happening in the world, right? The workplace is not separate, right, from what someone's feeling, what someone's going through, what the experiences and conditions of their lives are. So I made it sound really simple. It's not that simple in practice, right? But it is that simple in theory, and just desire to actually care about the people that you're around for 8+ hours a day.
Yeah, I want to turn to Nadia and then Dr. Hyman to close this out, because you're right, like it is simple and is not that simple. So Nadia and then Dr. Hyman, just each of you take a quick moment. And I'm wondering, again, given this context about like how much the workplace is changing and the rate at which people are leaving, and thinking about how employers can show up right now for their employers, I'm wondering if each of you can leave us with some parting words on how employers can do that and kind of be present for their employees and can cultivate that sense of belonging in this kind of I'm so sorry to use the word unprecedented. I feel like we're all so tired of it, but like this very, very real and vulnerable moment in the workplace.
I think for me, I have an awesome supervisor who has taught me a lot, but also have had a previous supervisor who they have been very supportive, and they always like ask me how I am doing. I trust them, and I am able to just bring my full self. So I definitely feel like it has to be a safe space where I can come in and say I need a day off. So if I want to say why, then I can say it, and if I don't, then I don't. But like they encourage you to be yourself. They encourage you, and they see you as a full human being who is very dynamic, very complex, and you still are always focused on the mission. So as long as you are always focused on the mission, but then also like just bring your full self in a safe space and you grow, then yeah, that's a good supervisor. And I want to be there for other people like that as well. It's just empowering and very encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. One thing I just took from what you just said is the importance of modeling. Like if I want someone to show up like that, I have to show up like that too. And to close this out on a final note, Dr. Hyman, perfect question for you. Like this is a leadership moment, right? Like what can managers do to kind of be there and to show up and to account for everything that's happening right now in the world, while also kind of managing so much change internally?
Yeah, I would say wellness, and I know that might be cliche, but from an organizational standpoint, organizations have to set structure around that, right? So it might be meetings free Friday. Maybe it's no meetings until 10 a.m. during the week. Maybe it's an extra PTO day if you can afford that financially. Maybe it's providing resources to go and have team building, right? You're paying for lunch and you're paying for activities, right? But the organization is holding managers accountable to ensuring this is going on. And I think lastly, I'll say managers being open and honest about how they're feeling, right? Like I want to come to work and know that my manager is human, right? And that I could come to them about what I'm feeling as well. So I think someone said that modeling, the importance of being well and taking care of yourself is important. So I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you so much. A perfect note to end on. I have so many more questions and wish we had more time, but I just want to thank all of the panelists for giving us like some really honestly vulnerable and human answers that also feel really practical. I feel like I could have taken a list of each one. So thank you so much for sharing your insight with us and your practical strategies for change management. I'm going to hand it over to Raquel to close this out for the day.
All right, thank you, Corinne. I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling really full right now. It's a great amount of overwhelm. Thank you to all the panelists for that really action-oriented conversation. I was looking through the chat as you all were talking, and I saw a comment that stood out to me. Susan said, and I'm paraphrasing, many in my generation have worked since the mid-60s to reach this point. This webinar is what we dreamed of. So I just wanted to say this conversation was incredible, but let's all make it just the beginning. This does not have to be the end. I hope everyone here is feeling as energized as I am and ready to keep having these conversations and to continue working to create workplace environments where each and every person can feel like they belong. Huge thank you to America's Promise Alliance and Grads for Life for hosting today's event, and to AT&T for the generous support that made it all possible. Thank you to America's Promise Alliance and Deshaun Rice specifically for having me and inviting me out. If you think any of your colleagues, family, or friends, anyone would benefit from hearing the conversation that we had today, remember that this event was recorded and the full recording will be available to you for another 90 days. We will share the link with the recording with everyone who registered in a post-event email so that you have easy access to it. Thank you again to every single soul for taking the time out with us today. Please remember to take care of yourself, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday.